what we can do and what we have the power to do is to reprogram ourselves to be in alignment with what we want to achieve in life and who we want to be and what kind of life we want to live. And the best way to do that is to get into the rooms of people who are already living the life that you want to live. And then you learn from them. What we need to do is that we need to become comfortable with discomfort. And by that it is saying that we need to recognize that whatever is new, whatever is unfamiliar, is going to feel uncomfortable for a while before now our subconscious has recognized, okay, this thing that was unsafe because it was unfamiliar, now it's familiar, now we feel safe here. And once we realize that everything in life is a result of our program and that we have the power to change it, that's when we can really start taking our lives into our own hands. But I mean, this is not easy work, it's not fast work, but I feel like it's very important work.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Brainwash to be Broke series. Today's guest is a transformational leadership coach and TEDx speaker who help high-level entrepreneurs unlock their power, shift their identity, and lead with conviction. She moved countries without a plan, rebuilt from the inside out, and now guides others through deep inner work that creates real-world changes. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Rebecca Hansen. Hiya.
Hi, so much. Thank you for having me here, first of all. Interesting topic that you're talking about.
Thank you so much for being here. It's my pleasure to have you. I have so many things to ask you about, and I would like to start. If you can just give us a little bit more of your background, where do you come from, and how the entrepreneurship journey started for you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Denmark. I moved to Rwanda 6 years ago, so in August 2019, just ahead of COVID. My entrepreneurial journey actually was sparked during the COVID period because there was all of this time spent where we couldn't really do anything. And during that period of time, I started taking coaching certificates and I started forcing my friends to be coached by me. And having already worked kind of in the space of transformation and human interaction and communications from my corporate work, it was just it was a transition that made sense. So I did spend a couple of years doing that while I was still employed. And then eventually I was like, okay, let me go all in on this thing. And then I quit my job and have been coaching as my main thing since then.
Amazing.
Mhm.
So I would love to ask you, like, how it was for you from the beginning, or like when you've been raised. What actually the success should look like for you?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think I was raised with the same conditions around success that everyone else was, right? We were taught that in order to be successful, you should be, a doctor or a lawyer, or you should have some sort of business degree. I spent 6 years in business school getting my master's, and then you go out, you get a job, then you should get promoted, you should get a mortgage, you get a house, then you should get married and 2.3 kids, and then you should, save up for retirement. And then one day, once you're retired, that's when you can really, go out and enjoy the world. It's like, let's wait 50 years before we can enjoy life, really. And I think, honestly, I don't think that the people who taught us these things did it from any sort of bad place. I think it came from a good place. It came from a good heart of teaching you, this is how you build safety. This is how you create a good life, because that's what they had been taught, right? They had been taught that this is how you build a good life. And I think also looking at my parents' generation, the parents they were raised by were people that grew up during war, right? There was occupation in Denmark, so that it was a privilege really to get out and get a job and create your own life. You get to have your own life where you make some decisions. And I think that was just really put into people's minds. Oh, sorry, my dogs just came home from a walk. So I think it really came from, good intentions and wanting to create a safe space for people, because what they had wasn't safe.
Mm.
And then you had this boom, in the 70s, 80s, where people started, getting good jobs, and employment became, more widespread, and they became, it was a good thing to have a good job and being able to provide for your family. And you started having much more women in the marketplace, so now it becomes women get out there and get jobs, and it was a privilege. But I just think that whenever we are teaching the next generation what the previous generation had learned when it comes to safety and when it comes to job security and when it comes to building a good life, we're really doing them a disservice, because the world changes so fast that what is good for the next generation is not the same that was good for the previous generation. And I think that's where a lot of, especially, millennials get stuck, is like, we were taught all of these things and now the world is so different. And what we're seeing, the people who are experiencing the kind of success that we want, they're not living the kind of life that I'm living right now. And we end up feeling kind of stuck, maybe. So where our grandparents' generation, the best life you could have was something where you had safety, you had routine, you would go home with your family, and that was a good thing. It was a great thing because they grew up with a very unsafe life. And now that has kind of been put into our hands, and we're like, but I don't necessarily, that's not what I want. I don't want the routine. I don't want the same expectation, like being able to expect the same thing every single day. I want adventure. I want something different. I want to see what this world and this life has to offer. And then we are going to have to kind of break through that programming that has been built into us in order to feel fulfilled, in order to feel like we're living a life of purpose, in order to feel like we're creating something that's ours.
Hmm. When you said programming, what do you mean by that?
So I like to see it as we all have an internal software that determines what we do with our lives, what the decisions we make are, how we feel, how we think, what we believe. Everything is kind of programmed with pieces of code. So when we look back and we see, okay, how did we grow up, right? What were the messages that we received? How did we mirror other people? Because, also we can tell children to do something, but they're going to model what we do, not what we say, right? So there's just so many different places that we're getting like these little pieces of information that we then put together in a program, and then we run the program, and then
Right
that
from the yeah,
determines.
right from the beginning, right? Like when we are kids, raised by our parents, and they are they've been taught some way from those older generations, and then they are trying to they mean it like their attention is just to save you or like make you safe,
Mhm,
but it actually hurts you because they limited beliefs from their
mhm.
older generations that they've been handed to them keeps you on the same track, and they can see the possibilities that are actually at the moment, right?
Yeah,
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 so
absolutely.
yeah,
And I think also with our subconscious runs about 90% or so of the program, right? Depending on who you ask, it's like different percentages, but we're up there. We're at about 10% conscious mind, 90% subconscious mind. And the program is very subconscious. So whenever we make assumptions about what a good life is, whenever we make assumptions about what a good decision is, and whenever we have assumptions or judgments about what other people do, what they think, how they say things, why they do what they do, it all kind of just runs from this program. And once we realize that everything in life is a result of our program and that we have the power to change it, that's when we can really start taking our lives into our own hands. But I mean, this is not easy work. It's not fast work, but I feel like it's very important work.
totally. Yeah, completely can relate to that also. And especially when I've been raised by my backstory a bit is that I've been raised by my grandparents because my parents been working most of the time uh to works into jobs, and so I haven't seen them for literally a week, and I see them just weekends most of the time, and so that was like really tough time for me, especially not having the the parent support and everything what I actually need. So I've been still raised by my grandparents, and that was the time when I saw like I'm not going to follow the same script as they do, because what they do is they're just working crazy hours every day just to get by. And that was the moment that I have to like it started shifting something in me that I need to change the trajectory of my life, right? But most of the people, I would say, they're still stuck in that, and they still dream about going to school, like having high degrees, getting loans, like from right from the beginning. What is your take on that?
I mean, school is not necessarily a bad thing for everyone. The school does provide you some good things. I think one thing that I really enjoyed learning from school was that I learned how to learn new things really fast. So that in itself is a skill. I also think where I was in my life, and with the personal challenges that I had just with my programming, and with who I was, I think having a very structured surroundings was good for me. It was comfort for me. It helped me, manage some of the things with myself, and with my own programming that just really needed to be done before I was ready to go out and just do a very different type of life. So I don't think necessarily school is always bad the same way that we like to talk about, oh, school is awful because it just teaches you to be boxed.
Mm,
But if you learn how to unbox yourself, I mean, you can start looking at what are the good things that you can get from school. That being said, I definitely feel like there's also too much being put into the hands of the school. The
mm,
school is not going to guarantee, no matter how good your degree is, the school is not going to guarantee that you get a good job at all. I have a lot of really smart, highly educated friends who went without jobs for a really long time, even in a country and an economy that has a lot of available jobs, because they simply were not, they just weren't getting it. And I think when we try sometimes in schools and in universities to teach people the things that aren't actually going to give them a good life. And I think when we are in a society and when we are under conditions where school is not going to be your savior, it's going to be one thing that you can use if you want to, but it's not going to be the thing that determines whether or not you get a good life. That comes from self-leadership. That comes from figuring out, where do I want to go and how am I going to get there? And am I willing to look at the people who've already achieved what I want to achieve and learn from them, even if what they say goes against what I learned in school, right? Are you
mm,
going to be the kind of person who can pick and choose based on who you want to be? Are you going to be able to create that life and seeing your programming for what it really is? Like, when I find myself feeling resistant towards something, am I able to see it? Am I able to dismantle it? And am I able to overcome it so that I can continue in the direction that is actually aligned with the life that I want to live? Right. So I think this is a different, excuse me, it's a different level of critical thinking right? We were taught that critical thinking means that you should question this and this and that. But it's like when you learn about it in a school context, we only get critical thinking to a certain extent. We get critical thinking within the boxes. It was like, how do you just reevaluate everything that you've known to be true? Even for just the exercise of doing that, even for just saying, what if things were actually different? What if this thing that I've been assuming, what if that is not true? And that is painful work at times because you've spent your whole life believing something to be true. And it's not easy to just say, oh, I guess I was lied to. It's hard. It's hard work, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like the entrepreneurship journey is not easy. It's for sure hard. There is so many things that you need to overcome and being able to be successful, right? But also like I'm not saying that everything about school is wrong, and because we need the doctors, we need people who are actually able to do the profession they decided to go with. But like for most of the people, I think the entrepreneurship journey would make much more sense in their like in with the goal they are trying to achieve than actually going and trying to like uh you know just study and spend like take a debt and just follow the script based on some type of vision that don't even fit
Mhm.
their dream outcome. And to that because this is not the only thing that actually uh, will be during their life that's actually going to cost them something, because the thing is that you are getting a loan right from the beginning, but then when you find your dream partner, you want to start your life, and there is another thing that's coming because you want to actually make a safe place where you're going to live your life and being able to take care about your family. So there is like, for example, another thing that coming in is mortgage, and then you are like deep in debt, and then you are trying to all pay off like during your life, like working for a corporate job 50 years or so on, and then you're like, okay, maybe now I'm finally free and I can start enjoying my life in my 60s or 70s. That's pretty scary to me, and that was like why I decided that I don't want to actually go this way, and I want to go and start doing something that actually, because making lots of money is not attached to how hard you're going to work, or how many hours you're going to work. It's attached to how much value you can create for others. What's your
Yeah.
take on that?
Yeah, I think that's very true. I mean, if we look at the people who work the hardest and the longest hours and are the most exhausted by the end of the day, very rarely they're the ones who are paid the most, right?
Mhm.
So I think just looking at that and saying, with the thing that we've been taught that working hard will bring you a good life is not necessarily true. Simply because it now creates a system where people will work hard for the purpose of working hard, which means that they find a value in feeling exhausted at the end of the day, but then they show up to work the next day and it's like nobody really honored that, nobody really saw it, nobody really cares that much because working hard is not necessarily the same thing as creating value. So shifting that mindset to how do I create, where can I look at where do I create the most value, even if you are in a job, looking at how do I become, what does the company value the most? And very often that's where the money goes, right? Getting money into the business or cutting costs in the business is very often considered highly, highly valuable in a way that you can very clearly measure this is the money that I bring into the business or this is the money that I've saved the business. Now you can negotiate higher salaries based on that because you've literally created yourself as a valuable asset within the organization. Now, this obviously also brings into their entrepreneurship. How do you create higher levels of value for people? How do you create higher levels of value for people who want to pay for that value?
Mhm.
Now you can start creating things that people want to pay for. But this in itself is not enough. I mean, we need to learn how to sell. We need to learn how to package this value in a way that people want to buy it. And I think a lot of people, because we go through the school system and we're taught integrity and specific types of skills, and we learn that selling is not really one of them. I don't know about you. Like, I went through 6 years of business school. Nobody taught me how to sell. Nobody
Mhm.
taught me how to manage my own finances.
Yeah,
Nobody taught me how to set up a business. And
that's
it's
the
like,
thing.
okay, so why exactly did I spend all of this time? A lot of the skills that I learned in school, I've never used them.
Mhm.
Ever have I used them in
Mhm.
real life, right? So like I said, I feel like one of the key things that I learned from school was learning how to learn new things fast.
Mhm.
So, which is really a valuable skill in itself.
Yes.
But I feel like if we learn how to see value, we learn how to understand value, we learn how to package value,
Mhm.
and then we learn how to sell it in a way that people want to buy it, then now we've learned something that is a skill that is going to keep you out of poverty for the rest of your life. Because if you
Mhm.
can learn how to package and sell things, you will never be broke because you will
Mhm.
always understand no matter how the world changes. We had so many people become millionaires during COVID, right? Well, many other people lost their jobs because they understood how to see something, package it, and sell it in a way that would rapidly increase their wealth, their net worth. So Yeah, I think you have a really good point on that.
Yeah, that's really interesting topic, and especially about the money, because you know we are going to school studying things that for sure are important at some point, I would say, but we are not ever taught about how to actually operate with money, or what is the purpose of money and how to work with money. Can you go a bit deeper on that?
Yeah, I mean, financial literacy is very limited when you look in most schools. So I feel like, and it doesn't really have to be a difficult concept. I feel like we put a lot of responsibility in the hands of our parents when it comes to teaching financial literacy. And I'm not really sure why, because if they should be the ones teaching us financial literacy, why shouldn't they be the ones to teach us how to read and write? And why do we need school in the first place then? You know, so it's like we're expecting our parents to teach us or our caretakers, if you didn't grow up with parents, it's like, we're expecting them to teach us all of the core skills in order to stay alive and in order to have a good life. But it's just not really the reality. And I think that's why we see a lot of people just growing up to be the same as their parents when it comes to their social status, like when it
For
comes to their,
me, for me, it was that I've
yeah,
been actually teaching my parents how to work with money.
yes.
This is
Yeah,
insane.
it is insane, and honestly, it doesn't really have to be a difficult concept. We look at so many of these books that are available, and they're really quite simple. It's like take this much of your income and put it into savings, take this much and put it into investment, take this much and build your life around it. And if you can't do it in those percentages, just find a percentage that works. And a lot of people will say, "Oh no, but once I start making more money is when I start saving, is when I start investing." It's like, no, but that's not how it works. You're gonna have to build a habit of saving and investing before you start making the money, because once you have those kind of habits, that's when you learn how to grow money. And it's much smarter and it's much more efficient to learn financial literacy when you don't really have that much to move around with, because now the consequences of making a bad investment is not really going to be that much, right? Okay, so you invested a couple of $100s poorly. It's a much better experience to get than if you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars poorly, right? So
Have
even
you
when
have you ever read the book Richest Man in Babylon?
yes, I love that book. It's wonderful.
Really, really like it's so powerful book.
And it's so
Everybody who's
simple.
listening, who should you all of them, you should read it, because this is like about money and financial literacy. It's super interesting topic to actually go and study.
And it uses storytelling to teach it, right? It makes it a very easily digestible book. It's very simple. It's very easy to follow the concepts that are taught. And it's taught in an interesting way because you're literally just reading stories.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah, totally. So if there is somebody who is listening, what would you tell them how to like how they should operate with their money, for example?
Yeah, I think just making the decision to be more responsible with your money. I think a lot of people are so used to the money that they have and they're like, oh, like I said, one day when I have more money, I'm going to start being more responsible with it. But that just doesn't really work like that, because no matter how much money you make, if you have poor ways of spending it, and I know this from personal experience, okay? No matter how much money you have, you're going to spend it all if you're the kind of person who spends it all. So how do you become the kind of person who makes sure that a part of the income, however small or however big, goes to financially responsible things like saving, like investing, making sure that you're just building that habit with whatever it is that you do have. And I think also some of these tools that we're taught, like some people are saying you should spend 50% on life necessities. I think for a lot of people, that's not really realistic. I think for a lot of people, they need more than 50% in order to just make do. But even if you can find 5% of your income and you can make some sort of decision to say, okay, I'm going to spend it responsibly, either by saving or either by investing or both, you start building that muscle, and that knowledge that you gain, the wisdom that you gain around money, the experience that you gain with that is so impactful. It's not only about learning how to save and invest. It teaches you how to become the kind of person and build an identity around being a financially responsible person, which is just, it's really impactful work.
Mhm. So when you actually started your journey of entrepreneurship, what was the first steps that you actually took to actually start educating yourself and figuring out the way to towards success? Was
I
it like
spent a
because,
bunch of
for
money on
example, sorry, just about because I would say that for for my scenario, it was that I can say that I've been a little bit like affected the way that I choose to start with, because it wasn't first entrepreneurship. It
it.
was actually investments. I've been studying money first,
Yeah.
and then I moved to study, business and so on, because I saw business as a faster way to get a bigger amount of money in place, and then I can use those money to actually start investing them. What is
Mhm.
your take on that?
Well, actually, I did something very similar. I started
Mm.
doing investment coaching, and course, I started learning how to invest before I got into entrepreneurship. And then the coach that was teaching investments was like, the more money you get in, the more you can invest.
Mm.
So look at ways where you can increase your income. Then obviously entrepreneurship became a big part of that. So I started learning the skills. I spent a lot of money on coaching in general, both in when it came to the investments, when it came to just learning business skills, learning entrepreneurship, paid to get into the rooms of people who were already doing things to kind of just model what they were doing, understanding what they were doing. I think it didn't really make a big shift for me until I started doing the identity work because I didn't take myself seriously as a business owner for a very, very, very long time.
Mhm.
So even after I had set up my business, even after I had started getting clients and working with clients, I really didn't see myself as a business owner. I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. And however you show up in life is a direct result of how you see yourself. So I had to do a lot of work on the identity. I had to do a lot of work on my insecurities, on my self-esteem, on my confidence levels. And this was after having done decades of like mindset work. So
Mhm.
my mindset was impeccable. But the thing is, we very often use our mindset to kind of try to override how we feel about ourselves by just forcing thoughts into ourselves. And it doesn't work because we will always act in alignment with our subconscious in the long run. So that's really back again to the programming. It's just so important that we do this work
Yeah.
because if I continue to just see, entrepreneurship and my business as a hobby, then nobody would also take me seriously, to invest in me in a way that would keep my business, long term. So it's been such important work to do. So
Mhm.
I've had a lot of different types of coaches. So
Yeah.
many.
Yeah, I think even like when when you've been mentioning coaching and so on, like I'm telling you, that was the one of the fastest way of my growth ever, to
Yeah.
investing in a coach. But um back to the point of the schooling and so on. Do you think that people are being set up to stay broke without even knowing it?
Oh, absolutely. But I think when we're talking about being brainwashed, I
Hmm.
think one thing that goes into people's minds is that it should be intentional, right? People are
Hmm.
intentionally brainwashing you. And I don't think that necessarily is the case. I really do believe that the people who are teaching us the different values, sorry,
Right.
my dogs are very happy today. So the people who are teaching us these things that kind of keep us broke, I don't think they do it with bad intention. And I really think that if you are listening to the word "I'm being brainwashed," first of all, we always have a rejection towards that because we don't want to acknowledge, we don't want to kind of accept that we're being brainwashed, right? Because we all feel like we're people of agency. We all believe that we have our own authority. We're like, no, nobody has brainwashed me to anything. But once we recognize that it's not really about an intentional trying to change you into being intentionally broke, that's not what this is about. This is about you're being born into a world. You have zero idea of what the world looks like. You have zero idea of what is good and good values and bad people. And none of this is really known when
You
you're
don't
born.
even know what is true or what is false.
No idea. You're a complete blank slate. And
Yes.
if you were picked up by aliens and they taught you alien ways and brought you back to Earth, you would be like, I mean, this is just a thought experiment, right? I have no idea why people do what they do or say what they say. The languages, and I think even when we're exposed to different types of cultures, I mean, obviously you've moved away from where you grew up, so you've seen this, right? You've seen people being different, acting different. You find yourself feeling very strange in moments because what is normal to you is not normal to other people. And when we really see that, we recognize, okay, if I had grown up in a different part of the world by very different people, I would have been a very different person. Which is just it just shows you that we learn how to think and behave and act in specific ways. We learn how what something is normal. We're being taught that through how we grow up, and not necessarily by someone intentionally saying, I'm going to program you into being this human being. It's like, no, I'm going to teach you the values that I have been taught. And
Mhm.
then that just kind of carries through in generations.
Mhm.
And what we can do and what we have the power to do is to reprogram ourselves to be in alignment with what we want to achieve in life and who we want to be and what kind of life we want to live. And the best way to do that is to get into the rooms of people who are already living the life that you want to have to live.
Mhm.
And then you learn from them. You
Surround
know,
yourself with the right people, because
yeah,
I love the saying that you are average of five people who you are most spending time most with.
yeah.
So that's really, really one of the real important thing that everybody should be thinking about, and make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people who are motivate you and have similar vision of your life.
Mhm,
So this is really like one of the things that actually changed a lot for me, because I had to do some hard decisions to actually be able to, like, I want to grow every day. I want to be with people that they want to grow and help others. This is really important for me.
mhm.
Probably it's going to be also important for you, right? How did you get around those type of people?
So again, investing into mentorship programs that had people in it that were just already at the place where I wanted to be.
Mhm.
But I think one thing that I love the expression too, that you have to be really, considering who are you hanging out with, because that becomes your new norm. But I think also one thing that we really need to recognize is that as human beings, one of our first responses to change is to reject it, to resist it.
Mhm.
So if we understand that the subconscious, which is 90% of our program, it's been set into place in order to keep us alive. It's a survival mechanism. And what keeps you alive is doing the things that have kept you alive so far. So no matter how much we might dislike our life, it's like, but we know it's safe. Subconsciously, our brain is like, at least this is safe. So you have stayed alive. So we should definitely keep doing what we've always been doing, right? So whenever we're exposed to something that's new, something that's unfamiliar, something that feels counterintuitive, our entire system is going to say no, and it's going to reject it. And then we're going to kind of try to make an attempt, and we're going to see this failed. So obviously it doesn't work. And then our conscious brain goes in and makes all of the excuses for why we should actually stay where we are.
Mhm.
And that's why a lot of people end up just really not moving anywhere, because the subconscious system is rejecting so much because they want to stay safe. It's a safe
Mhm.
survival
How
mechanism.
would you overcome this anxiety or this type of subconscious programming?
Yeah, because it is really it's terrifying sometimes, right? And you see it when when you cross the road, you're halfway through the road and a car comes, we run back instead of running forward because we've already been the first half. We know that's safe, so our subconscious kicks in and it takes us back to where we've always been. Like this is where we've been so far. And what we need to do is that we need to become comfortable with discomfort. And by that is it is saying that we need to recognize that whatever is new, whatever is unfamiliar, is going to feel uncomfortable for a while before now our subconscious has recognized, okay, this thing that was unsafe because it was unfamiliar, now it's familiar, now we feel safe here. And then whenever we want to reach to a new step, the subconscious is going to come in and say, oh, but we don't know this. This is new area. Let's not do this. Let's find a million excuses for why we shouldn't. Let's put the whole system into a panic mode so that we are too anxious to actually move into it. But what we need to recognize is that it is part of the journey. Sitting through this anxiety, being okay with the anxiety, being okay with the fears, and doing it despite of the fears is really what does. And we need to continue doing that for long enough for our subconscious mind to be okay. Now we're feeling safe. Now we're feeling better. We can stay here. And then as soon as that kicks in, we're going to find a new space to jump into. Hey, anxiety is back. And it's really once you build the experience of, okay, now we've done this enough times, I can recognize that this is just my subconscious mind trying to keep me safe. There's not actual danger here. Is like I have to use my conscious mind to continue through it. Then the more we actually do that, the less the anxiety is, because it's like now it becomes familiar to do unfamiliar things,
Mhm.
because the subconscious mind is going to say, oh, this is another iteration of this stuff that we've been doing.
So are you saying that people who are successful, they are still being scared or
Yeah,
being working with this type of anxiety, but they're just doing anyway?
they do it anyway, and they become at some point they just recognize that it's part of it, and they become so quick at making a decision and following through on the decision that the anxiety doesn't even have that much time to soak to ferment. One thing that you see a lot with successful people is that from the decision point to the action point, it's very, very short.
Mhm.
Whereas a lot of people who are unsuccessful, they're going to say, I want to do this thing. And then they don't really do it. They sit with it for a very long time. And eventually the anxiety has built up so much, they're going to say, yeah, they have all the excuses for why they shouldn't do it.
Stuck in the anxiety, and then that's
And then
preventing them from
it
it.
grows, right? It grows because you give it so much time to sit with it. And I
Mhm.
think what you see is it's very interesting to see, because you're looking at also things like imposter syndrome, right? A lot
Mhm.
of people think the people who do the things that they become successful, they don't have imposter syndrome, but that's simply not true. We
Mhm.
all deal with imposter syndrome. And I love looking at someone like, Justin Bieber recently came out and said he struggled a lot with imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
Whitney Houston was very famously dealing with imposter syndrome, but they did it anyway, and they had the support system in place, like having a lot of people say, okay, we're just going to go in this direction. And then they didn't have the work of actually preparing themselves and mentally becoming ready for the thing. It was kind of pushed on them. And now you see a lot of clashing between the mental state and how they're showing up. And there's a lot of that, right? But if you become the kind of person who's able to manage your emotions, manage your thoughts in a way that is aligned with what you want to do in life and who you want to become in life, then the mental health doesn't really have to suffer so much, because you understand what is happening and you
Mhm.
learn how to manage it.
Should you like capture your emotions along the way to actually be more conscious about them, like what is happening and so on? Because I know some practice that you, for example, should, when something like that kicks in, you should write it down and literally to rewrite it. You should start writing like step by step what you're going to do when that's happened, and that's how you're going to overcome the the reaction. Do you have
I mean,
different? What do you
Yeah,
think?
that's one way to do it. That's definitely
Mhm.
one way to do it. I think the only thing that I would not recommend doing is ignoring it and pretend it doesn't happen. If you ignore your emotions and you're just kind of pushing it down and you're like using your conscious mind to just push it downwards and pretend it's not there, eventually those emotions are going to come out. And the more you push it down, the greater the breakdown is going to be, right? So I think whatever it is that you need to do in order to recognize that you have these emotions, to sit with them, to look at them, to feel them,
Mhm.
you know, see, okay, I see you, I feel you, I know, I understand why you're here, but we're gonna do this thing anyway, and we're gonna be
Mhm.
okay. And we're gonna get examples from people who've done it before us, and we're gonna, like you said, it might be a really good plan to just write out whenever if something bad happens, we have a plan, right? But I
Mhm.
think it really depends on who you are as a human being, how you best deal with stuff.
Mhm.
For me, I've noticed that if I describe to myself where's the feeling in my body, I'm feeling really something very intensely right now. Where does it sit? Let me just sit with it. Let me just feel it. Let me just recognize it. And then the more kind of just feel into it, the less powerful it is. And then eventually it just releases itself.
Mhm.
And sometimes that means like just sitting and crying for 10 minutes or like being really angry for 10 minutes or just letting that through. But what you then do is that you allow yourself to feel it and then you move on,
Mhm.
right? But if you push it down, it will continue to want to come out.
Mhm.
And that's what we don't want.
Yeah, the recognition is really one of the most important thing because I don't know if Tony Robinson who said that it's 80% of the, the success or breaking it down is basically to recognize it first,
Yeah.
right? Then you can start acting based on that. And that's really really important piece to
Yeah.
actually know and be aware of. Um, what's the biggest lie you think you were taught about success growing up?
Oh, I think what so it wasn't really necessarily a something that I was told.
Mm-hmm.
It was more in terms of what I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that I wasn't the kind of person who could be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody ever said that to me. Everyone actually said, "Well, you're going to do great. You're smart. You're hardworking." So everyone kind of gave me the confidence, but I didn't feel it internally. And when I didn't feel it internally, it just, sometimes I really dislike these very deflated statements that everybody says because it kind of loses value when something is said too much. But it is really, if you can believe it, you can do it, right? Because I've really experienced on myself that when you don't believe something is possible for you, you're just never going to put yourself into the situation where something is possible for you because you're always going to assume that you're going to fail. And if you already from the get-go assume that you're going to fail, you're never going to give yourself fully to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really important part because yeah, you need to believe, you need to have the level of certainty to be
Mm,
able to actually go and make that thing happen and do it for sure.
yeah.
Um, once you went on this journey of, rebuilding yourself and both things you have to overcome along the way, was there some struggles that you had to, because everybody knows that entrepreneurship is not, as we mentioned before, it's not just easy path. So what was the one of the biggest struggles that you had, and how you would help other people who have probably maybe some similar struggles right now? How would you help them, or how would you yeah, how would you help them, or to actually overcome that?
So I think really managing to see the parts that were holding me back internally.
Mhm.
So I invested a lot in a lot of amazing strategies,
Mhm.
and I saw a lot of strategies work for other people, and they just didn't work for me, and I didn't fully understand why that was. And I had to really do the internal work of figuring out what is the self-image that I have, not in my head, because my mindset was impeccable. And I know a lot of people are like, mindset is everything, but it's really, really not. Because so much of our subconscious mind comes through, and so much of our behaviors come through how we feel about things. And I would feel so much resistance towards me actually working with clients. I realized at some point that I kept rejecting clients subconsciously because I was worried that I wasn't good enough to help them. I was worried that we are going to get into a situation where they would reject me. I was worried that we are going to get into a situation where they weren't happy with my services. So I never even reached a point where I would give it a chance. So I ended up doing all of my best work in the beginning, I did for free because then it was like, oh, but like if it doesn't work, what can they do, right? They can't really do anything because they haven't paid me. So I did a lot of really important work for free. And I struggled so much with charging, even after I had gotten all of this evidence that I had helped people make so much money, make a significant like changes in their businesses that really escalated the growth. Like, they had exponential growth through the work that I did with them. And I still struggled to charge because it all came down to my self-image. It all came down to my insecurities. It all came down to me just not feeling good enough. And that was such a common theme throughout my entire life. And it wasn't in my head. And I think that's really what the important distinction is. Because if people think, oh, you just need affirmations, oh, you just need to change the language, or you just need to change your thoughts, it's like, no, what you really need to change is your feelings. You need to change how you feel about yourself. You need to recognize when is the resistance coming and then figure out why is that resistance in place and then how can we dismantle that resistance? Because whenever we feel resistance towards something, we will act in accordance with that no matter how great our thoughts are.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really important piece in this entrepreneurship journey for sure, because people, we are not like, we can see the value that we can provide
Mm,
pretty often, and because this is the way that many people, I would say, from the beginning, how they are raised. Because uh, I love the quote, that the reason why you are not successful or why you're doubting yourself and so on is because you heard uh, or all of those lies that you've been told to yourself, because you've been saying it, so only you know all of those, and that's the reason why like you are unable to actually get the success as fast as you can, because you are actually not believing in yourself the way that it's supposed to be to actually make uh, the thing work actually for you, or get the sale, or being confident enough to actually talk to people and present it the way that they're going to feel that what you are actually doing. and
mm.
and there is so much power in that. um, but I want to ask you also, what success for you look like? Like, what is your tribe that you are trying to build, or what is the thing that you're trying to build?
Yeah, it's really funny that you asked that because that has changed so much over time.
Mm,
And I think that's one reason that I'm saying, like, when you have goals, be very, very flexible with them because what you believe is good for you and the life that you want to live is going to change as you grow. And if we're too, stuck and go like, no, I said 10 years ago I was going to do this thing, so I haven't, like, give room for yourself to change, to grow. I used to be very focused on the money only, and I would be very willing to give up a lot and sacrifice a lot in order to get that money. And that's like not the case anymore. There's a peace of mind, there's joy, there's happiness, there's time freedom is really big for me. Working with the kind of clients that I personally want to work with and having the freedom to say no to the type of clients that I don't want to work with. So I think really not being ruled too much, like having the financial freedom to be able to say no, to be able to take breaks, to be able to create space, to be able to have the kind of experiences that I love, to be able to travel more, to be able to just have more freedom to myself and the things that I desire and creating the life of the experiences that I want. For me, that's so much more important than the number on the bank account. Now, that being said, I still do believe that financial freedom is very important, but it's not the pinnacle. It's not, it's a tool to the kind of life that I consider successful more than the success in itself. Yeah.
that's yeah. This is super powerful. Thank you for sharing all of that. To wrap this conversation up, I would love to also ask you where people can find you, and to just thank you for that, and for sharing those values and informations, and even thank you.
Yeah, sure. People can find me. I'm most active on Instagram, handle being I am Rebecca Hansen. They can also reach me at rh@rebecca-hansen.
Amazing. All right. And for everyone who's listening, if this stirred something in you, don't ignore it. Share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe, leave a review, and remember, you weren't born to follow the script. You were born to be free. Bye, everybody.